What's poppin'? It's Mello back at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about diminished chords and how to use them in your songs and tracks. No matter what you use to make music, this is going to work for anything you do. You know, it's going to be universal. With all that being said, let's get into it. So first, let me help you identify what a diminished chord is. A diminished chord is just two minor thirds stacked on top of each other. So what that means is you start at the root, count 3 notes up from that, 1, 2, 3, and then count up 3 more notes from that, 1, 2, 3. So that's 2 minor thirds. Let's listen to that. Sounds very dissonant. As far as a diminished seventh, what is that? You add another minor third on top of that. So 1, 2, 3. So that's all a diminished chord is. Let's get into the application of how to use it. We're going to talk about bridge chords first. When you have 2 chords in a progression and the roots of those chords are a whole tone apart, meaning 2 semitones away from each other, you can use a diminished chord on the note in between those to bridge those 2 chords. Let's go over some examples. Right here, I have this progression, and we're going to be working in C major for all of these examples. So this is a 1 chord where the root is a C going to a D chord, which is a D minor. And as far as those, if you look from C, it's 1, 2, 2 semitones above as far as the next chord. So that means there's a 1 note gap in between those. So what you can do is what I did in blue, put a diminished chord in between those. Now, it doesn't matter that you're going outside of scale. That's something that I need you to know, because all the light gray notes represent notes within the scale. It just matters that the 2 chords that you built this around before you put it in the diminished chord are both in the same key. That's all that matters. So you heard what the quality of that sounds like. All you would do is, in a progression that you have, cut a chord in half, put the root 1 semitone up from the root of the main chord that you started with, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If you want to turn it into a diminished seventh, you can go 1, 2, 3. It's that simple. And let's look at this other example, walking down. We're going down, and if you notice, there's only a whole tone distance between the D minor chord, we're still in C major, and also the E minor chord. You can use that to walk down because there's a whole tone between both of them. Now let's talk about the secondary dominant substitution, which is the second method, and we're not going to get into what a secondary dominant is. All you do is build a diminished chord right before a minor chord comes in the progression, 1 semitone under the minor chord. And it doesn't matter what the chord is before that, it should definitely work. If you notice, this right here is a 4/6 progression in C minor. So, and if you notice, these 2 chords, this and this, are the same. All that I did was chop the first chord in half and then built a diminished chord again by placing the root 1 semitone under the minor chord that we're going to and building a diminished chord. So now that we went over those 2 examples, I'm going to show you some popular songs and how this is used in popular songs. So we're going to start with the first example, which is Alecia Keys, If I Ain't Got You. It's in G major, just so you know. This is a 1-2 progression. You look at the progression, it plays out 1, 1, 2, 2. Then we go 1, then diminished, then 2. So what is this? If you look at it, it can be considered a secondary dominant substitution because it's a diminished chord right under a minor chord. This is an A minor chord. Or you can call it a bridge chord because there is that whole tone gap between the G and the A. So the second example we're going to look at is Mariah Carey. So the second example is going to be Mariah Carey, Always Be My Baby. Let's listen to these chords very quickly. The red one is, of course, the diminished chord, and this is in E major. Now let's just analyze it very quickly. Again, it is a bridge chord because you're coming from this 5 chord right here, which is a B chord, to a C sharp chord, which again, whole tone gap, and you just put a diminished chord in between that. And if you notice, it's not a diminished 7th, it's just a regular diminished chord. This is the vanilla chords and stuff like that. Let's listen to how it's actually voiced. Now we have yet another one, which is Garth Brooks, Friends in Low Places. Let's listen to this. It is in A major. This should be very familiar because we've had 2 examples of this already. And it's just another bridge chord, but also a secondary dominant substitution from the 1 major to the 2 minor. So A to B, A major chord to a B minor chord. You put a diminished between that, you have a bridge chord. So you're probably noticing a trend by now, but let's continue. So now we're going to listen to the chords of Adele, When We Were Young, which is in D sharp major. Now I know this looks very complicated because the voicings of the chords are very complex, they're very rich, all that stuff. But we're going to simplify it for you as far as these chords right here. I'm going to erase all this, I'm going to erase all this. As far as these roots, we're going to erase those, and let's just go with the top chords. Let's move that one up a whole octave. What do we have here? It is an A sharp major to a B diminished to a C minor chord. That's what's going on. And if you've noticed through everything, every song that I've showed you is a hit, and it has this in common when they use a diminished chord. It's a bridge chord between a major and minor chord. A major and minor chord. So you have an A sharp major going to a C minor, and there again, whole tone distance between those 2 chords, so you can stick a diminished chord in between them as a passing chord. That's it. It gets that simple. So to make this easier and make this work for you, I'm going to break it down very quickly. So in a major scale, the 7 chord is diminished. In a minor scale, the 2 chord is diminished. So those 2 chords, you can't build, these diminished bridges around. So that's the first thing. The second thing, if you want to do the major to minor bridges, the way you're going to do that in a major scale, you're going to go 1 major to the 2 minor, or you're going to go from the 5 major, the 6 minor. And in a minor scale, you're going to go from the 7 major to the 1 minor, or you're going to go from the 3 major to the 4 minor. If you want to learn more about chord progressions, I have a video right here that you can check out. But also, if you want to get better at making melodies, I got a whole playlist right here that'll help you with the basics and fundamentals of making melodies. I'll see y'all another day. Somehow, some way, I'm out.